If you're currently overwhelmed trying to grow your business, you're doing a lot of things, but none of them seem to be working, and you need help understanding how elite entrepreneurs prioritize, this video is for you, because I'm going to show you exactly how I help a client prioritize a month's worth of work. They will be performing just 2 hours per day so he could achieve an extra $50,000. So I'm going to show you exactly how to think about prioritization, how to organize your workload so you don't waste time chasing the unimportant and spinning your wheels. Prioritization is one of the most important skills you can develop as an entrepreneur. It really makes a difference in business, but there are no schools that teach this except ours, except Selfmastered. I'm going to show you exactly how you can start developing the prioritization muscle. The best entrepreneurs out there, oftentimes, they're not the best because they're smarter than average. It's because they never quit and they know how to work on the things that matter most. So this video is going to show you how to think like an elite entrepreneur. And if you're new to the channel, my name is Castillo, founder of Selfmastered, Executive Performance Academy for online entrepreneurs. We help you scale with peak clarity, focus, and discipline. So this video is about a conversation I had with one of our clients the other day. For context, he has an education business and he is trying to fill his cohort for next month. He's been doing this a number of years, but right now he is visiting his relatives and he can only work 3 hours per day. So he asked me, hey, how can I make sure that our next cohort is full without me having to work more than 3 hours a day? And he still needs to run the business. So he has a few assistants, a few team members, but he is the head of the show, right? So every sales initiative has to be on top of his normal workday. So the first thing we did was optimize the workday, really understand the things that he absolutely needs to do himself. And then we went into the prioritization exercise of every sales initiative that he had available in order to fill that cohort. That cohort is 10 slots at $5,000 a pop, so it's $50,000. And he only has, remember, 2 hours per day to devote specifically to sales, right? And before I list all of the options and how we run through this exercise to find the highest leverage and the things that he had to do first, let's try to understand exactly what prioritization is. So prioritization is choosing the fewest numbers of things that are going to give you the most bang for your buck. In other words, prioritization is the art of identifying leverage. So leverage is a force multiplier. Leverage is a relationship, an asymmetric relationship between inputs and outputs, right? If I put one input in and I get one output, this is very low leverage. Everybody has 24 hours in their day. So it is safe to assume that the difference in results always results from a difference in leverage. Is putting one input in and getting 1,000 in terms of output. This is what we are seeking at all times, always trying to have more with less. And in general project management, there's this concept called the critical path. The critical path, it is the shortest path towards your goals, which is typically where you have the highest leverage. It is these sets of initiatives that, when compounding, take you to your destination the fastest. So for instance, imagine that you want to go from New York to San Francisco. Well, the critical path, the highest leverage, the fastest way to get there is by private plane. Then is through commercial plane. Then is through a supercar that can, or high-speed train in case it existed. I think it doesn't. And so on and so forth. We are measuring in terms of speed, right? So in essence, the critical path is always the minimum series of steps that you need to take in order to get to your destination, in order to achieve what you want to achieve. And it's always a measure of leverage. Leverage is the force multiplier between two variables. Oftentimes, this is called the 80 80-20 rule that says that 20% of the effects of the causes has 80% of the effects. So if we focus on the things that truly have an impact, we can work way less and have a lot better results. So the first concept here is leverage and the critical path. This is the first thing we need to master, the things that matter the most. Anything outside of the critical path and anything that is low leverage is a waste of time. So, for instance, an example of this, we're going to go into the sales example in a minute, but we're going to be discussing sales strategies and marketing strategies that really work at scale, like sending emails or working with influencers or sending, doing all sorts of stuff. The low leverage task would be not working on sales, not doing anything that is sales related in order to fill your new cohort. The first thing we have to understand is that in order to sell, we have to prioritize sales. That seems very obvious, but for the average entrepreneur that is constantly paper cut, trying to do too much without really getting nothing done because the focus just isn't there, oftentimes the focus is outside of what it needs to be, right? Outside of the critical path because there's a lack of understanding of the concept of leverage. So everything that we're going to be discussing has to do with leverage, revolves around finding the things that matter most. That is very important. Now, there's one more thing here that is also crucial. It is the concept of reaching the threshold. Threshold in systems thinking is accumulating enough energy so at some point the system changes. What does that mean? It means that every initiative that we do, everything that we do it to the limit. We finish every task that we start and we do not stop working on the task until we have had a result or we have exhausted all options. So this forces focus, because let's say if we say that we are going to be sending cold emails, right? For instance, if we're going to be sending cold emails and we set cold emails as an initiative, in order to cross the threshold, we have to accumulate enough cold emails sent to understand whether the system is working or it's not working. So if we decide on cold email, but then we send 200 emails, this is not enough to know whether we have exhausted the channel. We need to send 20,000 emails, let's say, in order to know whether the channel works for us or not. We need to commit to the channel before we can draw a conclusion. Most folks will just do the bare minimum expecting results. It's always about doing more in a conscientious manner, like really knowing what you're doing in order to extract the data that you are after, right? So this is very, very important. We need to cross the threshold. We need to know for a fact that we have done everything we could to get signal out of everything that we do. A good example of this would be water, right? Water, if you boil it, like if you heat it, nothing will change until you heat 100 degrees Celsius, so 2012 Fahrenheit, I think, right? This is the threshold. The boiling threshold is the temperature. So heating the water is useless, so to speak, until we heat the threshold. Well, it's the same principle. If we commit on sending emails, but we only send 200, it's just absolutely useless. There's no data that we can work with. If we send 20,000, that is when things become interesting, right? So this is the two concepts that I want to first discuss in order to frame the conversation. We need to be working on the highest leverage task. That's the whole purpose of the exercise, understanding what is the highest leverage task, but also what is the critical path? What is a series of steps that are going to get closer to our destination? And taking into account that everything that we do needs to be done to the extreme in order to get as much data as we can. If we send a couple of emails, talk to a couple of people, and do a couple of marketing things, not gonna work. So don't even bother, right? So without further ado, how did we help our clients fill a cohort? All right, so what is this thought exercise that we did? So first of all, let's list the options that we had here, right? So the first option was follow up with sales calls that didn't sell, with calls that didn't close. That is the first initiative that we have. So it's follow up. Now, initiative number 2 is influencer marketing. But it's someone that already worked in the past, right? So it's old. Then you have influencer marketing, new. So reach out to new people. Then you got, and these options that we discussed, right? Then you have increase ad spend. Ad spend on what's working. Then we got increased content. More content. Then we got outreach. So DMs. Then we got emails to the newsletter. So email marketing. And then we got referrals. And then we got 9 webinar. And then cold email. So this is the whole kind of plethora of options that we have. First is follow up with calls that didn't close, influencer marketing, old, like the one that had been working in the past. Then influencer marketing, new ones, so reach out to new ones and sign them up so they can refer people. Increase ad spend on what's working, more content on Instagram, start outreach. Start sending email marketing blasts, referrals from students. This is important, from students. Create a new webinar and cold email, right? So this is the whole plethora of things, everything that we listed that he could do in order to fill his cohort. Now, which is the thing that makes the most sense for him? So first of all, remember the concept of the critical path and the highest leverage. In this case, what is the goal? In order to understand what to prioritize, we need to understand what is the goal. The goal in this case is to sell, is to bring people through the door. And therefore, what we prioritize are the things that are closer to the money, the things that are less of a hustle to eventually transform into the new slots booked that we want. And in this case, the thing that is closer to the money is, of course, following up with the calls that didn't close in the past, because maybe it didn't close because it didn't have the money, or because it was not the right time, or for whatever reason. But in this case, this is the thing to focus on first. This is the highest leverage task because it is the closer to the money. Then between the rest, influencer marketing, like do more of what is working and engage new influencer marketing, increase ad spend, do more content, outreach, How do we prioritize? Well, in this case, the next prioritization criteria is the one that brings the less entropy, the less hassle into your life. What are the things that, if replicated, if scaled, will have more results? And we find out that the things that were working best was content, then ads, and finally influencer marketing, the old one. So the next thing we prioritize is this, then this, and then this influencer marketing deal. So it's like reaching out to the same influencer that had worked in the past in order to sign new clients. And then how do we prioritize the rest of the things? Because all of the rest of the things are new. He had never reached out to some influencers, never sent email marketing blasts, never asked for referrals to his students, never created a webinar or did cold email. So in my view, then the next criteria is related to the learning curve or time to result of the new systems. If you're going to be reaching out to new influencers, even though you already have an influencer blueprint that may be working, cultivating a relationship with an influencer takes a little bit of time, takes a little bit of trust. It's not something you can action straight away. Sending outreach DMs to your followers on social media can be started straight away, but getting this right, having the right technique and knowing how to manage a conversation is not as easy as it sounds. Sending email marketing blasts to your list on the other side is very quick to do, and there's a lot of trust built in because they're already hot, right? We're assuming that if they're in the email marketing, they are hot. While followers on social media don't necessarily are hot marketing leads, they can be warm or even cold. It might be just, bystanders. And then finally, we have referrals, webinar, and cold email. Referrals from students is very easy to action. So it can be done straight away and it has a lot of trust built in. Then you have webinars, never done before, and cold email. So based on this and based on the concept of the critical path, how much leverage there's in the system, and the fact that we need to do something to the best of our ability before we can validate the channel, remember the concept of a threshold, I told him that what made the most sense at this point was for asking for referrals. Because in this case, he has a fantastic product. The trust is already built in. So if the incentive is there, just as the influencer marketing is working, even though he's never asked for a referral from a student, it can work very well. The next thing I told him to do is do email marketing. Email marketing, why? Because as I said, the email list is already hot. There's a lot of trust built in. So this is the sixth thing. And then what? Well, between outreach to your followers, webinar, which is an interesting asset, but it takes a little bit of time, and cold email, I told him to not do the webinar because there's a lot of complexity involved, and in 2 hours per day, that is not going to work. Cold email, even though it's easy to manage, it's hard to set up. It takes time to really dial in. And the outreach in the DMs can work, but it's the last thing to focus on. So this is the 7th initiative. So this is how we prioritize based on leverage and based on the complexity of the channel, always taking into account that we want to exhaust the channel. We want to reach a threshold of work, right? So what does that mean? It means that, first of all, within the 2 hours that he has dedicated for this, he needs to follow up with every single call in the past few years that didn't call. In a very, light manner. Hey, we're opening slots. Is this a right time for you to sign up? This is what we've been adding to the community. This is the recent results. We'll be happy to work with you if it's the right time for you. This is the thing that can already fill the 10 slots. But then I told him to increase the ad spend on the ads that had worked best in the past 3 months, right? So if we want more clients, what do? We up the ad spend, especially if that is validated. So after reaching out to every single prospect, we increase the ad spend and see what effect does that have on the number of calls booked. Also, create new content. Really repurpose the content that is already been published in previous months and years. How can we put a spin on this so that with 2 hours per day, you can have more results? And then double down on the influencer. If you've already been working on the influencer, he knows what to do. You just need to increase the budget for this marketing channel and see what happens. And then ask for referrals. So this is very easy to set up. If the incentive structure is just there, he has a lot of clients, has a lot of clout, well, just do it and see what happens. And then finally, I told him to prioritize these two only when he already had exhausted this channel, he had increased the ad spend and had a system for that, has increased the content and has a system for that, and had already reached out to the influencer and set up this referral for students. In my view, this doesn't need to be done because already the first 5 initiatives are going to be more than enough. So this is how you prioritize in order to achieve more with less. Sorry, if you only have 2 hours per day, you cannot do everything. So you prioritize first this, then this, then this, then this, and then this. Step by step until you have reached the threshold per channel. When you don't have more calls to follow up on, well, then you go to increasing the ad spend within reasonable budget, what you're comfortable with. Let's double the budget. Once you have doubled the budget and you have this running, then what do? Well, you double the content. Double the content within those 2 hours. How can you group the things you've been doing in the past, put a different spin on it, republish it in order to get new people through the door? And then you work on the influencer marketing, which worked in the past and can work again, especially if you re-incentivize that person. And finally, you work with the clients you already have. Thinking in this way, in this systematic manner, is going to yield way more results than trying to do all of this at the same time without a strategic understanding of the things that drive the most result. In other words, without understanding the concept of leverage. You can buy all the marketing courses in the world. You can learn how to generate leads and do all sorts of stuff in business. But if you don't know how to prioritize, how to budget your efforts, how to find the 20% that really matters, you're going to be spinning your wheels. And this is how elite entrepreneurs do it. Always thinking about the critical path. What is the shortest number of steps that I can take in order to get to my goal, and prioritize accordingly? It's the only way in which small teams can outperform much bigger teams, by being ruthless about protecting the most important asset they have as a team, which is their attention and their ability to deliver. And my client can do all of this in 2 hours per day. So 10 hours per week, perfectly fine. Because he's not judging himself. He's not trying to see what works. He's not seeing the greener grass somewhere else. He's just laser focused on making sure he achieves more by working less. And this is the way you have to think about it. Because if you don't know how to do this, it doesn't really matter how many skills you have, how many marketing, sales, product building skills, you are always going to be prioritizing the wrong thing, and the business will not grow. And this is one of the core competency of elite entrepreneurs. If you want to know how to instinctually do this, how to think like one of the entrepreneurs, if you want our direct involvement in reorganizing your workload and your business system so you can achieve more while doing less, book a call with us. This is what we do for a living, and we get fantastic results at it. There's more to prioritization, of course, than this, but out of respect of our clients, I cannot disclose it all on YouTube. So if you really want to join an elite group and start thinking like the elite entrepreneur that is lying within you, book a call with us, and if it makes sense, we will help you. But in the meantime, remember, it's all about leverage, it's all about crossing the threshold, it's all about minimizing entropy. Only focus on the things that matters the most based on the vision that you are going after. See you in the next video.